hopefully there's no grief there. You guys see the screen again? Okay, that's what 591 final project slide. Hello?
Yeah.
Is the screen?
Yeah.
Sorry. I can't see chat when I do this, so I have to. So there we go. Just like in the old 590, you had to do a case study, right? It was a lot of effort. You had months to prepare. And here we gave you kind of a month of lead time, but didn't give a lot of direction, just kind of said you're gonna, have to think about doing a final project. The case study was quite a big write-up and quite a big effort with a presentation and a final report for everyone, and but also a highlight of the course. It was really neat for the other students and instructors to see the examples of real fire behavior that students had encountered, and really great for the instructors too, to just keep continuously getting these snapshots of the fire behavior people were seeing and experiencing, some of the challenges in real world scenarios. So here the focus is on modeling, both some concepts, but a lot of tools for modeling. We're presenting fairly in-depth kind of sessions on 4 or 5 tools, and really inviting everyone to sort of identify where their interest, or maybe their sort of job job title and job responsibilities are most closely aligned, and basically try to empower you to go off on your own, right? So at the end of this, you don't get a certification, you don't get a you're now a certified heli-based manager or anything. Like, there's no CIFC Fireline certification associated with these things. The tools are all fairly complex, and so they do require a bit of sort of self-study, which is really hard to do because some students would take quite a bit longer than others. But for all the tools to really kind of understand them to their fullest takes a fair amount of time, and yeah, we'd have to really kind of focus on each one individually, and some people wouldn't be that interested in some of them. So this is kind of what we're trying to do, is give a little bit of the taste and then send you off. And for the final project is kind of the same idea. The idea is to pick one tool of your choice, one unit that's being presented, and focus on the concepts and the tool or tools presented. It doesn't have to be one of the bigger ones. It can be one of the 1 to 2 hour ones is fine too. And then the intention is just to go through the motions of the course, to do the learning, go through the exercises and the quizzes, and then once you've got that sort of initial basic understanding of the tool, you can make it work. You've brought in data or whatever the context is, you've interpreted it, you understand that it creates some sort of a modeling, some sort of a prediction, and then you have some idea of what it means on the output. So aside from that process, just spend something close to half a day of dedicated effort where that's all you're doing, right? It could be half a day over 3 days or whatever. It's not supposed to take a week full time. Okay, if some of you are really into this and you want to spend more time, that's fine, but we don't want a longer presentation. We don't want a report that's more than a page or two. We encourage people to get a partner. Now, I know that's a bit awkward because you're from all across the country. We're going to just say, try to find a partner if you can, and if you want us to assign one, we can, and if you also really want to work on your own, you can. But we thought groups of 2 would work well, where basically both people need to understand the tool and have participated actively in all steps. Because we're starting to get into fire season here, there's a pretty significant high pressure system and sort of heat wave, at least coming to the west, that'll then sweep across the central part of the country after. That's coming this weekend. We're going to be up into, I think, 20-degree temperatures in BC this weekend. Some people might be either doing PBs all of a sudden, or actually get to some of these sleeping giant wildfires that are going to pop up again. People get into training and all that. So we are going to come back on, I think it's April 5th. I think it's 2 weeks after the last day of the course, for a 2.5 hour session to do final presentations. Okay, but because we know some people have responsibilities that are going to show up, you have the option of just doing a report. if you show up for the final presentations, you have to do a presentation. So you can't listen to everybody's presentation and then decide to do a report, right? So if you show up, you're giving a presentation. So we're going to have a sign up. Dana's going to take a sign up of who's what the groups are and who's who picks which format. We're fine if everybody does a presentation. We're fine if everybody does a report. But we thought a mix of both would be nice, because some people are naturally good at briefings, and some people this isn't, we're not like in the F-band context. Some people are perfectly happy to beaver away at their computer and don't need to stand up and talk. And the final presentation should be 5 to 10 minutes, so no longer, right, for a group of 2, so quite quick. And the intention, again, is to use your local data. Use a case that is familiar to you. Okay, so that's where we said prepare yourself to be able to get some data from your local agency, from your past couple fire seasons, but it is going to be using one of these modeling tools and modeling approaches. Okay, so obviously there's a whole bunch of different things we're talking about. We've only had a couple days so far, so and also we have a real range of experience with these tools, and so we're going to hope everyone can just kind of be honest with themselves and with us. It doesn't have to be something that you've never seen before for the very first time, but don't, if you've done Prometheus 20 times, you're not going to learn much by doing another Prometheus simulation. So don't pick that one, please. If you're a real forestry silviculture guru and you're really familiar with stand structure, and especially if you've got, done a bunch of, done a master's degree or something looking at, measuring crown base heights and thinking about fuel treatment, so then maybe you're pretty experienced with that one, although there's a lot of new content in that stuff. But anyway, the point is pick something that's fairly new out of all these units that we're presenting. That'll become a little more clear as the week ends and we get into next week. And then, and then just try to immerse yourself just a little bit in the concepts and the use of a tool, okay? So that's, obviously there's some range here where Prometheus can be like, weeks of work where you're doing a fire day after day after day, very detailed, different weather models, different simulations, different ignition patterns, trying to get in suppression, something like we're getting, Dale is going to present a thing on strategic planning, bringing kind of a planning kind of context to real operational fire planning, where, what the F-band contributes, what various modeling tools contribute, that could be a very detailed exercise. So that's, we're not asking for massive efforts, and there's a bit of unevenness. So you just have to kind of, decide on the appropriate bite, the appropriate size bite to, that's appropriate for this final project. But the main thing we're going to be grading on is, do you understand some of the main concepts and use of the tool as was presented? So Neil presented all sorts of stuff about Prometheus, theory, practice, projects, ignitions, some tips and tricks, advanced modeling. So we want to see some of that. It doesn't have to be the greatest simulation ever, but it does have to demonstrate that you heard what he said and understood some of the tips and tricks. And that's basically it in a nutshell. Some examples, you got a big fire in Prometheus. Well, we don't want to see the whole thing, but show us a couple days run, right? Sam talked about downloading hotspots. Maybe you want to focus on, that. Maybe that was a big effort. It's actually getting the starting perimeter, and you had to get it from some data source, and you could talk about that. Dana talked about upper air analysis, right? So you compare some thermodynamic diagrams during high activity days, where he talked about the C. Haynes, and maybe low activity days. So you download the data, you show how, some days really, it was fairly obvious from that, that air profile that it was going to be, there's an inversion that had to break, and then there's going to be a lot more activity. There was a lot more instability on one day compared to another day, something like that. We're going to do a session on long range analysis using a bunch of different tools and approaches. So that's where you're actually getting into a bunch of, longer term weather data, weather from several stations, weather from several weeks or even months, and maybe pulling some summary data, some summary statistics, things like percentiles. We're going to go over how to do some of that. What can you get online, in terms of seasonal forecasts and seasonal summary data. So just that sort of approach where you're not even necessarily looking at details of a fire anymore. You're just looking at things like number of spread event days, the probability of getting a rain event, or a season-ending event or a big wind event, that kind of thing. We get into fuel treatments. We'll talk about at a different scale, very fine scale. You're pruning trees, you're removing ladder fuels. Talk about stand structure, but more forestry aspect. What can we get from FBP? What's beyond FBP using tools like CFIS, and then target fire weather conditions. What sort of what were we aiming for, and what do the modeling tools suggest would get us there, if anything. And finally, we've got some bigger weather sessions next Wednesday. If we're looking at business of like the assignment that's related to numeric weather prediction models, comparing different forecast models for a real time and place, right? So what was forecast according to different models? Maybe what happened, or in general, what were we interpreting by looking at these different models and these different prediction tools, and starting to think about more than just the surface weather forecast, right? Where the FBP world is really focused on surface winds, surface FWI conditions, measured winds at 10 meters, other observations just off the ground, but looking a little bit more profoundly into the atmospheric data, and we got into that a bit with the upper air, but the weather guys are going to talk a bit more about some of these more advanced weather phenomena, whether it's low-level jets or predicting plume-driven fire events, or some idea about pyro CBs, that sort of thing. So actually looking at an actual time and place and using those tools to think about those concepts. We've got a couple shorter sessions, one at the end, Steve Taylor on prescribed fire and tree mortality. And Carrie Anderson on Monday is going to talk about fire behavior inputs to smoke forecasting models. So those would be options as well if you wanted to use some sort of real data and look at those. So that's kind of what I wanted to present. And then from an assignment point of view during the course, we're going to ask you to submit your project idea, your topic or title, and who you're working with by the end of the day next Wednesday. So basically we'll have gone through everything except the final quiz. And I guess Steve Taylor's talk on using the SCORCH model for prescribed fire and mortality will be after that. But if you have an interest in that, you could always ask Steve, or you could always propose it. And then, pending that we haven't actually, you won't have heard about that topic, but that's okay. If you're interested in that, you probably have some idea of what it's going to be about. I'll stop sharing here and see if there are questions, or if Kelsey or Dana or anyone else wanted to add anything. We haven't sorted out every aspect of the grading for this, but it is worth a chunk of your final mark. We've asked the instructors giving individual units to help with grading projects related to their unit. There may be some variation on that. Just some folks are busier than others, and it makes more sense to get help from grading from core instructors compared with guest speakers. But that's sort of the idea, because we know that the experts aren't on the topics, are the ones who presented the work, not necessarily the people in the not necessarily me or Kelsey or Dana who are sort of administering the course. So no questions or comments. This is clear as mud, clear as day. Obviously, as you put together some ideas, you can talk to your mentors. You're welcome to reach out to the unit leaders. Because I'm saying this on Wednesday, we have a whole bunch of material related to the project that we haven't seen yet. So some of it is probably not that obvious until we go through that. So I understand and apologize for that. There's no way around it, unless you're, if you want to do something on Prometheus, you've seen most of what we're going to talk about that's directly related to Prometheus. But yeah, those other topics are going to be, we're going to be doing the instructional sessions on those in the next few days. So obviously much more will be revealed, but that's to give everyone a little idea. And then, of course, yeah, working on the project, the intention that it is, Friday we have a short day. Sorry, next Friday we have a short day. We have a quiz, the Prescribed Fire and Scorch product, and then some final discussion. Possibly, if we need extra space in there, we may take up a little bit more of that final morning before the break, but then it's done, and so you could start on your project right away, or you have a couple weeks to work on it. If you are not planning on submitting it by April 5th, you have to let us know. And then you're basically going to be incomplete for the course until we get it, your final project, and grade it. That's okay. We know that happens. We'll just be dealing with each person individually. If you have a group of 2 and something happens and you have to one of you is suddenly unavailable and can't finish, then we'll just have to address those cases individually. We don't want anyone to get screwed because their partner got busy all of a sudden or something. So we'll have to take those cases individually, but I guess that does speak to the benefit of working with someone within your own organization, because maybe you have a little bit better sense of the pace of things. But that's the final project. Obviously, we're trying this for the first time, but you've been through case studies where there's much more work and you've seen some of these tools. So yeah, what is this going to demonstrate? Because we're showing all these different tools and concepts, and you're only going to focus on one for your final project. And that's just the way it is, right? And we're just asking you to pick one that you're not already an expert in, or you don't have tons and tons of experience in. So try to do the honorable thing and treat that as intended. And we can, as the course unfolds over the next few days, we can address more questions in the discussions, during office hours, or in the morning or break sessions as they come up. Do check in with your mentors. We will ask the mentors to check in with you guys, by early next week, for instance, to see who needs help. As you mentioned before, so these all involve getting data, whether it's fuels and ignition data for Prometheus, or weather and climate data for long-range analysis, or something about stand fuel treatment. So that's a little bit, the idea is you have already done some poking around and some listening as to where you can get those data. And if you need help, we can, your mentors and the instructors can help you finalize that. And if you have no idea and you can't get anything, we can feed you something, but that would be missing some of the point, which is to use, spaces and situations and fires and, weather that is most relevant to you in your part of the country. Everyone's so excited, they're speechless. That's, I guess, the spiel about the final project. If there's no further discussion or questions right now, I'll stop the recording again to start it. And I'll let sort of Derek and Natasha start to get themselves organized. And if you think of something you want to ask, of course, this is the time to do so, but I'll just do that. So we're